Okay, this is a review of the muscles on the human anatomy models that we have here in the lab. We've all been over this in the lab section of the course. This is just a review to get you ready for your quiz. The leg. First, we begin with two muscles that originate way up in here in the pelvic cavity, one on the vertebrae and one on the ilium. The first one we're going to deal with is attached along the ilium, the iliac crest here. It's the iliacus. Next to that is the psoas major. Both of these muscles come around and insert on the front of the femur. Here next we have on the back side, turn that around, go to the opposite side, we have on the top here the gluteus maximus muscle, large muscle, right here. So underneath the gluteus maximus right here is the gluteus medius. Next to that is the piriformis. And then below that down here is this rather rectangular muscle, the quadratus femoris. All right, we're going to go back around toward the front and look at two muscles that have their origin here at the corner of the ilium, the front corner. One goes to the outside, one goes to the inside. The one on the outside right here is the tensor fascia lata. The one that comes to the inside, the long muscle that wraps around to the inside, is the sartorius muscle here. Between the tensor fascia lata and the sartorius, we have these four muscles that make up this group. The quadriceps group on the front of the leg, the one that goes straight down the middle of the leg here, is the rectus femoris. To the inside of the rectus femoris is the vastus medialis, more medial, and then to the other side, vastus lateralis, the more lateral one. Now behind the rectus femoris, between these two vastus muscles here, is a vastus intermedius. Behind the rectus femoris muscle. Next we have four muscles in our adductor group that pulls the leg toward the midline. The first one is a very small triangular muscle right here called the pectineus. The pectineus located right here. Adjacent to that, the attachment of the adductor longus. The adductor longus, which would go behind your sartorius. We can't see all of it. So there's the adductor longus. Next to that is the gracilis muscle, and then behind that, the adductor femoris. Right here, this muscle. Now on to the back of the leg, back here, we have our hamstring group. And in our hamstring group, we're going to identify three of the muscles. Medially, we have the semitendinosus and the semimembranosus. The semitendinosus that lies on top of the semimembranosus. And then laterally, we have the large biceps femoris muscle. This is the biceps femoris lying next to the semitendinosus and semimembranosus. That's the hamstring group on the back of the leg. On the lower leg down here, there are two muscles that attach to the Achilles tendon or calcaneal tendon down here. The top one, the larger one here, the gastrocnemius. Down below that and underneath of that is the soleus muscle. So gastrocnemius and soleus both attach there on the heel to lift your body up on your toes. On the front side of the lower leg, we have one muscle that goes right across your anterior crest of your tibia here. It's called the tibialis anterior. Next, that's the one that inserts on the inside, the instep of your foot. I called it the toe tapping muscle. Next to that is the muscle that lifts the toes. It's called the extensor digitorum longus. So we'll go over those one more time. First of all, the iliacus and psoas major here at the top, inserts on the front of the femur. Then some here on the back, that insert on the back of the femur from the pelvic girdle. First being the gluteus maximus muscle here underneath of that. the gluteus medius muscle. Next to that, the piriformis muscle, and then the quadratus femoris muscle right here. Back around on the front, we have the tensor fasciae lata over here. Doesn't go very far, it just tenses that connective tissue. And then the sartorius muscle, which is this very long one that comes to the inside of the knee on this side. Between those two, on the front of the leg, we have our quadriceps group, rectus femoris, vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, and then between those we have that vastus intermedius. The adductors include the pectineus, the small triangular muscle here. Next to that, the adductor longus, the gracilis, the adductor femoris muscle, and, well, that's it, that's the fourth. Now on the back of the leg here, the hamstring group, semitendinosus that lies on top, and semimembranosus we can see kind of underneath and behind that. Next to that is the biceps femoris. So those three make up your hamstring. Down to the lower leg, we have the gastrocnemius and soleus that attach on the heel. And on the front of the leg, we have tibialis anterior that attaches to your instep to lift your foot. And then next to that, we have the extensor digitorum longus that attaches on the toes to lift the toes. Now we have the arm model. It goes down the list of muscles associated with the arm and shoulder here. The first muscle, remember we cut away our trapezius muscle along here so we can see the supraspinatus muscle. It's above the scapular spine right here, supraspinatus. Below the scapular spine right here is the infraspinatus. At the very lower edge of the infraspinatus is this muscle. It's the teres minor, and below that the teres major. So we have those four to identify there: supraspinatus, infraspinatus, teres minor, and teres major there on the back of the shoulder. Better put this on here. Here's your deltoid muscle, which main shoulder muscle going on to the lateral part of your arm to abduct the humerus. Up here, in front of that, we have this major muscle of the chest. It would attach along the sternum and along the clavicle and attach here on the upper part of the humerus. That's the pectoralis major. Pectoralis major. Underneath your scapula, on the back side of your scapula, is the subscapularis muscle. Subscapularis muscle, it also inserts over here on the humerus. And then the latissimus dorsi, it's a very large muscle of the back. It comes up here and we only see a small little piece of it that inserts on the humerus to pull the arm down, like when you're climbing a tree or something of that sort. So anyway, that's the latissimus dorsi, just a little bit, just a little piece of that muscle there. On the front of the arm, we have our biceps muscle. Next to that, on the lateral side of the humerus, we've got the brachialis muscle. And then on the back, we have our triceps muscle. So this should be called biceps brachii because we don't want to confuse it with the biceps femoris of the leg. So biceps brachii, the brachialis, and then the triceps muscle going around your humerus from the front to the back. On the forearm down below here, we're just going to do those on the anterior surface here. First of all, the one that turns your hand over to pronate is the pronator teres, and then three muscles that flex at the wrist. The first one is the flexor carpi radialis. Next to that one that inserts here in the middle of the palm, it's called the palmaris longus. And then lateral to that, we have the flexor carpi ulnaris on the ulnar side, the little finger side. Flexor carpi ulnaris. So those four across there are pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, and then flexor carpi ulnaris. Coming from the other side of the elbow and inserting down here near the thumb, we have the brachioradialis muscle, the brachioradialis. So let's review those one more time quickly. First of all, we have the cutaway part of the trapezius muscle right here. You'll see that more on the torso models. Next, we have the supraspinatus, the infraspinatus, the teres minor, and the teres major. There's our deltoid muscle, large muscle of the outer shoulder, deltoid. Pectoralis major, which is partly removed. It should attach along the sternum and cover more area. Attaches along the clavicle and over here to the humerus and has its insertion. Pectoralis major. On the back side of your scapula, the underside, you have your subscapularis, and we saw this little piece of latissimus dorsi coming in. Surrounding the humerus from the front to the back, we have our biceps brachii on the front, brachialis on the side, triceps on the back. In the forearm, we had the four that go across on the medial side of the pronator teres, flexor carpi radialis, palmaris longus, and flexor carpi ulnaris. And then finally on this side, this large muscle right here, the brachioradialis. Brachioradialis. Now for the muscles of the torso models. Beginning with the head here, we have that muscle that includes a belly on the frontal bone and one on the occipital. It's the occipitofrontalis muscle. Occipitofrontalis muscle. Next, we have the temporalis muscle. Temporalis muscle. It's above the ear on the side of the head. The next muscle we identified kind of goes up underneath your salivary gland, your parotid gland here on the side. It's called the masseter. The masseter. And it's shown also on this model here, right there, is the masseter muscle, the main jaw closing muscle. Then on these models we have a muscle we can see that surrounds the eye, makes a nice circle around the eye, and one that makes a circle around the mouth. This is the orbicularis oculi around the eye, and the orbicularis oris around the mouth. It can be seen on both models, orbicularis oculi and orbicularis oris. The next muscle is the sternocleidomastoid, from the sternum and clavicle to the mastoid process of the skull, sternocleidomastoid, right there in the neck. That big muscle right there, sternocleidomastoid. Next, that trapezius muscle that we saw cut away on our arm model, we can see all of it here on this model. It has its origin from the back of the head, the occipital bone on the head, all the way down your vertebrae, so it has a broad attachment here, and then it narrows and comes out to your shoulder, attaches along the spine of your scapula, as we saw before, and on your clavicle to some extent there in the front. Your trapezius. Down below that, we have this large latissimus dorsi muscle coming up right here, and it also has a broad attachment from the hip all the way up to the thoracic vertebrae, and comes up in to attach on the humerus. The latissimus dorsi. Next, we need to talk about the muscles of the abdominal wall. On the front here, the muscle that comes down at an angle from your rib cage toward the middle of your belly is the external oblique. Beneath that, underneath of that, is an internal oblique that comes up the other direction. On this model, they illustrate the external oblique on this side coming down from the ribs to the belly, but on this side here they show the direction of fibers coming from the hip up toward the middle, so this is the internal oblique on this model here, internal oblique. To the inside of the internal oblique is the third layer of the lateral abdominal wall, the transversus abdominis. So we've got three layers there, external oblique, internal oblique, and then transversus abdominis, as you go from the outside to the inside. And then straight down the middle, we have the rectus abdominis muscle. The rectus means straight down the abdomen, the rectus abdominis muscle down the middle of the belly there. And you can see it as well on this model here, the rectus abdominis muscle. The last muscle is the serratus anterior. This is serratus anterior right here. And I remember now we forgot the pectoralis major. Pectoralis major here. Pectoralis minor shown right here on this model. Pectoralis minor right here. Pectoralis major was cut away here so we could see the pectoralis minor, and you can see the entire pectoralis major on this one. So let's go over it one more time quickly. First of all, the occipitofrontalis across the top of the head. The temporalis muscle above the ear. The masseter, the main jaw closing muscle, chewing muscle, right here. The two circular muscles, orbicularis oculi and orbicularis oris. The sternocleidomastoid from the sternum and clavicle up to the mastoid process there in the neck. I think next we should do the trapezius and latissimus dorsi. Here's trapezius here, latissimus dorsi down here. Then we do our pectoral muscles. With pectoralis major, large muscle of the chest seen here, and pectoralis minor seen underneath of that, deep to the pectoralis major, right there. Then the abdominal muscles we have just covered. The external oblique comes down from the ribs toward the middle, the internal oblique coming up in there, and the transversus abdominis going across this way. Then the rectus abdominis going straight down the belly here. On this model they show the external oblique here. The internal oblique is just shown as a narrow zone between the external oblique and the transversus abdominis of this model. Rectus abdominis again down the middle. And then the serratus anterior muscle is the last one. Serratus anterior seen right here on this model and right here on this model.